Need to raise this up a little bit, I guess. Well, thanks again, Jim. Very nice of you. Let me clarify something. I don't know if anybody noticed in the first notice or intro to my talk a month ago when OK Ethics sent the email out. It said, blah, 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 Ted, blah, blah, married Pat in 1982. And in 1987, they returned to Tulsa with their 5 children. So let's see, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87. Now, we all know kids are blessings, but nobody needs 5 blessings in 5 years. We did return to Tulsa in 1987, where we have raised 5 children. You know, most days, most hours of each day, we spend a lot of time trying to impress our coworkers, our bosses, our friends, our golf buddies. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good to impress those people around us, right? But how often do we leave the house thinking, I need to make my kids proud today? I need to impress my kids today. I need to think about how I will impress my kids with my values, my character, my language, how I deal with success, how I deal with defeats, challenges. Those things, those goals of impressing our kids. I think it's an investment as a parent, and I think kids are always watching. Let me fill a gap, tell you where I'm coming from. So in 1986, as Jim said, we were working in Oklahoma City. I was working in Oklahoma City as a landman. Married my wife, Pat, my college sweetheart. We had one son, Matt. And in '86, the price of oil found its way to $9 a barrel. Not good if you're in the oil and gas industry. Went through one round of layoffs, fine. Name didn't get called. 2 months later, not so lucky. So in March of '86, I never heard the term corporate downsizing, but I was introduced. Okay, fine. You know, lose your job, people lose their jobs, let's go. I'm driving to Tulsa about 2 weeks later for an interview, and I notice street signs getting kind of fuzzy, kind of blurry. Didn't think a whole lot about it. I thought maybe the contacts need to be cleaned, maybe you need a stronger prescription. Anyway, so I get back to town that night, and so the next day I go to the doctor and check this and check that, and each day for about 10 days it got dimmer and dimmer, and I'd lost my sight in about 10 days. And during these 10 days, we had done all the tests you can think of, MRI, spinal tap, EEG, everything. And everything was normal. They couldn't find anything wrong. They thought it was temporary. They thought it was probably caused by stress of losing my job, which seemed odd, but I didn't know. So over the course of about 6 or 8 weeks, when they thought it was going to be temporary, we were just kind of waiting around and waiting for this temporary blindness to go away, because I'd always been healthy and had no vision problems, nerve problems, anything like that. So after about 2 months, we went back and they said, you know, Ted, and I'd gone back to the doctor every couple of weeks just to check on things. Everything was what they thought, nothing had changed. After about 6 or 8 weeks, they said, well, we got a problem. Your inflammation in your optic nerves has gone down, and it's left dead tissue. And the dead tissue has created a block, so the light from your eyes can't make it to the back of the brain, so the brain can recognize the picture of what your eyes are looking at. And they said it was caused by optic neuritis, which was a rare infection. And what made it more rare was it was bilateral, both eyes. So I remember saying, okay, that what do we do now? What's the remedy? What's the cure? What do we do? How do we fix it? You know, everybody wants to fix things, right? A transplant, a rejuvenation, you know, no, there's nothing we can do. That nerve tissue can't be replaced, can't be transplanted. So that was that. And in these 6 weeks, about a month into it, 3 weeks into it, my 2 sisters sent me a set of the New Testament tapes, the Bible. So I started listening to one of the tape about an hour a day. And also in that same kind of time period, my wife came home from a teacher's conference. Again, we're in Oklahoma City. She came home from a teacher's conference and heard a very, very good motivational speaker. And she had brought me a couple tapes. She goes, these tapes are great. You know, positive thinking, motivational and all that, which was great. And so I would listen to those tapes about an hour a day. So I kind of had my routine. Again, I'm thinking this is temporary, so we're kind of building a bridge here so this thing to pass, which it didn't pass. But what I realized and what I kind of recognized afterwards was these tapes, by listening to Bible tapes, motivational speaking tapes, positive thinking tapes, I think it fueled my tank. I think it kind of gave me just kind of the ability to maybe deal with things in a different light. You know, this was, I got T-boned. I mean, you get something like this, obviously, it's a tragedy and it's a blindsided kind of thing, but the tapes really helped. It kind of, like I said, fueled my tank. So a couple things I realized when this was happening was not that I paid much attention to it, but other blind people had dealt with this. They had dealt with learning to be a good father or mother. They had figured out a way to lead a business career or a work career. So if they could do it, I could do it. I had no doubt about that. But the other thing, and maybe the more important thing, I don't know, was I wanted to make my son proud. He was 1 year old. Not that he knew any different, but as he grew up, I knew he would be watching, because kids watch, don't they? They notice what parents do. I wanted to make him proud. And I wanted to find a way, not that I knew how, it didn't matter at that point that I didn't know how, I was going to find a way to do it, but I just knew he would be watching. And you know what? We tell our kids to get back on that horse when you get thrown off. Well, I think it applies to adults too, parents too, maybe especially parents, because kids are watching. So I wanted to make him proud one way or the other. I knew that blind people could move on with their lives. That's what I was going to do. And that was my challenge. I also recognized that this was going to be a challenge, and it was always going to be a challenge. There was no denying that. That was the reality. That was my situation. There was no reason to pretend like it wasn't real. There was no reason in my mind to be angry and all ticked off and go kick the dog and punch the wall and be grumpy and mad and make everyone around me miserable. Who wants to be around someone like that? Now, again, I'm kind of going back to where I had some fuel in my tank for whatever reason. The lessons, the positive thinking, all those things made sense to me. Again, a challenge, always going to be a challenge. The future was going to happen one way or the other. Not much you can do about that. It's going to come at you. What are we going to do with it? So I was going to get, retooled. This was my new normal. This was my life. This was my wife's life. She didn't have any choice either. So what I needed to do was get some independent living skills through the state of Oklahoma. Did that, had to go away to do that for a month. I thought the guide dog was a good idea. Use that as a tool. I didn't know much about guide dogs, obviously, before that, but I thought that makes sense to me. I'll do that. And a couple things I knew about, tackling this challenge, I guess if you want to put it that way, was I was a confident guy. I think just maybe by nature. But I also knew that God was with me, that God wanted me to succeed, and he was a fan of mine. I just kind of thought he was. So I kind of had those things. I was going to move this thing down the road one way or the other, and that's just how it's going to be. Challenges find a way to find us, don't they? I mean, that's just part of life, and maybe we don't want to acknowledge that. We've all had challenges, some bigger, some smaller. If it's a challenge to you that's kind of holding you back, it's a big deal. Maybe it seems minimal from other people looking at you compared to someone else, but if it's holding you back, it's a big deal for you, and it's something that we need to deal with. In my case, I've had people say, well, Ted, I don't know how you deal with it. There's no way I can deal with that. There's just no way. I've had a lot of people say that. And my response is basically, you know what? I may have said the same thing the day before it happened to me, because I don't think we know. I do think we're a lot stronger than we realize. And maybe we don't know how to push ourselves until we have to push ourselves. I don't know. Everybody's different, right? And we all handle things differently. And we all deserve to have a bad day every once in a while. That's fine. But in my opinion, don't want to dwell on that too much. I know I didn't want to, because I didn't think that was a positive thing. So like I said, went through the independent living skills, learned how to sew on a button and cane technique and, all this kind of business. So I get lucky, I get a phone call, and this guy says, Ted, we're still in Oklahoma City. This is 8 or 9 months after it happened. Ted, when are you going to be in Tulsa next? When's the next time you and Pat are going to be in Tulsa? Because my mom still lived here. And I said, well, actually, here in about a week. He goes, well, I want you to come by for dinner. So-and-so wants to meet you. And I knew who so-and-so was. He was a friend. His family were friends of my wife's family from Henrietta. So we go over to have dinner with them, and we're talking. They're wanting to catch up on the guide dog school and this and that. And he goes, Ted, I like your background, and I really like your attitude. I want to offer you a job. And this was a little gas marketing company that he had started along with his oil and gas company. And that was a complete blessing, and it was a complete game changer, because that really, you talking about putting wind in your sails. It went way beyond that. And that was something that I guess I knew one way or the other I'd get this train back on the track. And I guess this guy, through talking to whoever or whatever, had recognized that maybe my wife and I were handling this thing okay, that we were trying to stay positive, that we, felt like with some good work and a little bit of luck, then things would kind of fall in place. And that was the first huge thing that did fall in place. So we moved back to Tulsa, and we get settled in. And one thing I told my wife, I said, listen, we got our one son, Matt. He was a year old at the time. I said, you know what, I'll always be able to kind of visualize Matt as he grows up, 5 years old, 10 years old. I'll be able to kind of guesstimate what he looks like, but I don't, no more kids, because I just don't think I could handle any more kids. Okay, Luke was born in 88, Samuel 91, Daniel 93, Anna 95. So that's kind of how that goes. And that's all great. Everything's great. Everything's good. Very, very proud of our kids, and I'll touch on that here in a minute. And the other thing is these challenges. Like I said, some people might kind of gauge a smaller challenge to a larger challenge, or it's got to be just a physical disability kind of challenge. Well, we'd probably all agree Steve Jobs changed the world. Well, Steve Jobs got fired by his own company. Now that's a challenge. It's different, but it's a whole different type of challenge. So we're going to have challenges. Okay, so this book, I get talked into it a couple years ago, and Jim, I'm going to have you read a couple book excerpts if you want to come up here. So I'm sitting down with a guy having a cup of coffee 2 years ago, and this guy's written a few books and all this kind of stuff. And he goes, Ted, you know what? You got a great story. You got to get that story out there. And I'm thinking, well, how did he know about my story? I mean, I don't know the guy that well, but okay. So I sit down and kind of start drafting this thing out, and it was good, and it was great memories going way back. And my wife would read, critique, chapter by chapter, and she said, oh, I forgot about that, or I forgot this went like that. That person did that, and it was all really good stuff. And I'm kind of a goof, kind of a lighthearted kind of guy, so I kind of take things as they are, and I'm just trying to keep the wheels turning, right? I'm just trying to work and raise kids and stay out of the way and not get hurt and do all this and do all that. And so, Jim, why don't you read that book excerpt on page 69?
One afternoon, Pat was taking a nap with Samuel, so I thought I'd take 3-year-old Luke for a walk around the block. We had a backpack built for carrying a toddler. It had a metal frame and could hold about 50 pounds. I walked out to the garage with Luke in hand, let him go, and pushed the garage door open. As I grabbed the backpack off the hook on the garage wall, I heard, "Daddy, Daddy, help, Daddy!" What the heck? I hustled across the garage to the sound of Luke's desperate yell. As I got closer, I could tell his yelling was coming from about my head level, maybe 6 feet off the ground. Luke had grabbed the bottom handle of the garage door as it was raising up, overcommitted, and was hanging onto the handle with both hands in a death grip. I should have left him there.
Okay, so a day in the life, right? I mean, it's just trying to get by. Another story, like you get into business, and I worked for Williams for years, and there used to be a thing called a boondoggle, where you'd go off and it'd be a ski trip or a hunting trip or a golf trip or whatever. And if the client calls, you kind of got to go with the flow. I mean, it's all about the client. So, Jim, why don't you read page 71? Got it marked.
I got a call from a client out of Houston one day. "Hey Ted, our company owns a hunting lodge down here in East Texas. This place is nice, not really roughing it. We've got a deer hunt planned next month, so come join us." Like with a gun? My finger on the trigger? "Well, yeah, we'll be hunting with rifles, but you can just come down and hang out around the guys and enjoy the trip. You'll like this place, lots of good food." Okay, so we get there, and the host got to thinking. He had one of the ranch hands go out and find a red laser to tape to the rifle. He'll be able to see your red dot and verbally guide you to point your rifle until the dot is on your target, he explained. "You've got to be kidding me," I said. "Just keep your finger off the trigger until I say so," said the ranch hand, with a chorus of agreement from my fellow hunters. Early the next morning, off we went. For some reason, they wouldn't let me carry my own weapon. I moved into the deer stand with the ranch hand, ever so quietly, as that's what hunters do. After only a short while, he whispers, "Okay, we've got one. Be still and quietly lift your rifle in place." Like all hunters, I put the rifle to my shoulder and, of course, put my eye to the scope to aim for my target. As my guide located my red laser dot, he said, "A little up and to the right, more right, slowly, down a little, back to the left. Now hold it there until I say shoot." Shoot! I pulled the trigger and bang! The next thing I heard was the gobble of an innocent dying turkey. Geez, who's that? I'm sorry, I said, confused. What happened? Is the deer gone? Laughing, my accomplice said, sorry, Ted, we're also hunting for turkeys. I got a little excited in the moment and just didn't think to tell you. Does this story have to make it back to camp? Absolutely. Well, the dot on my red laser beam did find a deer later that morning, and I have the skin and antlers at home to prove it.
Okay, so just kind of fun stories, and again, I think people that know me know that I'm, take life for what it is. Don't take myself too seriously. Work hard, play hard. That whole thing. When Shannon approached me a couple months ago about talking, I said, "Okay, sure." We got to talking about this, that, and whatever. And I said, "Well, should I open up for questions after?" She said, maybe not. I guess she figured maybe there'd be a few yahoos in the crowd that asked silly questions. So I thought, well, I'll do a frequently asked question little part. And so let me respond to some of the more common questions that I get, I guess. Guide dog, how's that work? What's all that about? So I'm on dog number 5. The school I go to is in San Rafael, California. It's the only school I've been to. There's several schools across the country, so I can't speak on them, but I know Guide Dogs for the Blind in San Rafael is great. Obviously, I've been there every time, so I'm sold on it. These dogs are bred at the school. When they're about 14 weeks old, they go to a puppy raiser family, and this puppy raiser family they've got a pretty intense, structured, organized manual on how to raise these as obedience. They're not doing any guide dogs. The puppy raiser family don't do guide dog work, but they do the obedience work. They take the dog to the mall, the ball game, around people, around noises, downtown, all that kind of stuff. When the dog's about 14 months old, they take it back to the school. Tears, hugs, tears, all that kind of stuff, I'm sure. And then they start the guide dog work. And the guide dog training takes about 6 months. So these dogs are roughly 18 months to 2 years old when they're ready to go as a guide dog. So after all that, they breed them at the school, puppy raiser, guide dog, all that kind of stuff. About half the dogs don't make it. Could be health, could be they just can't get the guide dog work, but the school says they don't flunk, their career change, is the way they put it. Which is good, because these are great dogs, great facility. And I've said before, guide dogs are not for everybody. I mean, I get that. For me, it was automatic. I mean, I just kind of heard, and I am a true believer in, you're more efficient and you can be more independent, and this is my opinion, and you can just, I just get along well with a guide dog. I've had one for 30 years. I was in downtown for 20 whatever years working, and I can get around pretty good. I mean, believe me, every time I walk by Coney Island, he thinks we're going there, so he stops like he's showing me the door. So I guess that's part of the training, I don't know. But you also have to have the right positive mentality to use a guide dog. And again, not for everybody, but you can't walk up to a busy, high traffic intersection, getting ready to cross, with the mindset, man, it'd be awesome if I survived this street crossing. That's not positive. That's not trusting you or the dog. The dogs they will work until they're about 8 to 10 years old, which means they're starting to get older and slower and not quite 100%. If they're not 100%, the school really doesn't want them out working because it's too important, obviously. They don't read street signals. They are waiting for me to say forward, left, right, halt. They're basically going to maneuver down the path, sidewalk, until there's an obstacle, and then they'll make a decision to work around the obstacle, or if it's a step up or a step down, they'll stop, waiting for me to, which is usually a curb, right? Step down the curb, usually waiting for me to say forward or left or right, and that's when you better pay attention to your parallel traffic, because it's all about the traffic at that point, parallel traffic. So again, I'm a big fan of guide dogs, and I'm sold on that. Other questions are technology. So when I first got into this back in 1987, that first job, I basically had a regular PC with a big old clunky speaker that had some voice software that would read the screen. So it's like all computer technology now. It's about 1,000 times better than back then. But basically, it reads the screen. I move arrows around, word by word, letter by letter, line by line, whatever. Spreadsheets, Word documents, PDFs. Scanners are great. Just like you guys, you scan a document and send it to somebody on email. I do the same thing. I get one, I click on the PDF, and I don't click on it, I enter on it, and open it up and read it. So it's all, I couldn't do what I do without the technology, obviously. Every iPhone's got a setting called VoiceOver. And you probably wouldn't know it if you didn't need it, but what VoiceOver does is it speaks what's on the screen. So as you touch the screen, it'll speak the icon it's sitting on. As you flick the screen left or right, it moves to the next one. When you move to what you want, you double tap. It doesn't care where you double tap. It knows you can't see the screen. You just double tap. It's going to speak that and keep going. So I'm able to check energy prices and weather and important things like football scores and all that kind of stuff. Siri, I use Siri just like anybody. It's wonderful. So technology is keen. Of course, I found a whole lot of things I didn't know existed when I lost my sight. I mean, there's Braille this, Braille that, and wristwatch that crystal opens up to feel the hands. So technology is huge. Senses. Have my senses increased? No, I think I pay better attention when I hear footsteps or a door open. And I do have people that will speak louder because maybe if I talk louder, his vision will be better. Okay, now I haven't figured that one out, but that's okay. People are trying. They're trying, and I'm fine with trying. But that happens, I don't know, semi-annually. So if you're one of those people, I'm sorry. If we've crossed paths in the past, but okay. One more thing. How has the family adapted? How are they? My wife's great. She's strong as she can be. Always has been. My kids. My daughter Anna is at our table. Very proud of Anna. She just graduated OU. She's getting her master's in social work. How's that? Good for her. So that's a challenge in itself. How have the kids adapted? Well, this is what they know. This is all they know. They know our normal. Like I said, I had to come up with my new normal. Is, when we walk through a restaurant, my hand's on their shoulder. That's their normal. When we go to a ball game, they're kind of giving me a play-by-play on one of the kids' what they're doing. That's their normal. Are they awkward about that? Well, aren't most teenagers awkward with their parents anywhere they are? I mean, yeah, they're a little awkward, but that's what they know. This is how our family rolls. It just is. And everybody seems to be good with it, and we've been able to make it all happen. So let me wrap it up by saying one thing, and this will go back to the book. As I was writing the book, and chapter by chapter, I kind of knew how I wanted to, unfold the thing. I started putting it down on paper. It was like, this was my story. Okay. And it's a different story, obviously, but it's my story. And I got to thinking, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story of who they are and where they are and why they are where they are and who they are. That's just our story. And that story was created by our actions, maybe some luck, maybe some bad luck, maybe some good people, maybe choosing to be around people that maybe aren't so positive, but it's our story and it's what it is. Some of that's history. And some of that we're proud of, and some of it we probably wish we had different outcomes, and that's part of it too. Are we proud of all of our story? I don't know, probably most of it. Most people probably are. Is our story over? No. Our story just gets us up through today. Tomorrow's a different chapter. So, again, I think we can find strengths we don't know we have. We know there's challenges out there. I think it's a matter of not asking ourselves, can I deal with this? Because I think by asking, can I deal with it, that almost puts in a little doubt in the back of your brain. Okay, I'm going to deal with this. I'd really rather not, but since it's here, I'm going to deal with it. And can we deal with mountains that get placed ahead of us in our path? I think we can move mountains if we choose to move mountains. So, thank you.